Do you have one of these or something that looks a little bit like this? If you do, today we're going to go from start to finish, from the unboxing to the building to how to cock it, uncock it, load it, fire it, maintenance, troubleshoot, everything you're going to need to know about your Ravin crossbow. That's all next on Trinity Wild. Hey everybody, thanks again for tuning in to Trinity Wild. So today we're going to go through the R5X. That's the crossbow that we have today to work on. Now there's the R5X, 10X. You've got so the X means it's silent. Some of the older models, the R10, all the way back to the R9 and the R15, those are not silent. So when you're going to crank those back, you'll hear a click, 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 click. With the X, anytime you see that, that means it's a silent crank system. That adds, of course, a little bit of cost to the crossbow. So the R5X was new a year or so ago. So we're going to work with it because this platform goes all the way through from the R5X all the way to the R29. So take the R18, kind of remove that. Take the R500, remove that. Those kind of work on different platforms. So this one is your basic R5, R10, all the ones, they're all going to work on the same basic platform. So let's unbox this thing and see what we got. All right, so R5X, we're going to open this sucker up. Now, some of you may have already seen this movie, but this is for the people that maybe haven't ordered one or have just gotten one you want to see. So that's the way she comes in the box. And then we're just going to take everything out. All right, so after we get that out of the box, that's what we've got. We got our crank handle, quiver bracket, 3 bolts, all your warranty stuff. Now their field points are in this pack. You got your crossbow scope and your crossbow. So let's see how this thing goes together. All right, so first you want to put on your quiver bracket. That's going to go right there. Now, if you notice where that screw is, that's going to mount right there. And if you kind of look and see how this kind of angles out, that's how you know. So you can't, the way they've got it now is I actually can't put it on the wrong way because it goes on the wrong, that way. See how they're angled up? So that's the way that's going to go on. Okay. All right. So this is everything that comes into your scope pack. Get your rings, little cloth clean. Actually have a Allen wrench, which most of us probably have thousands of those. And there's your scope. So we're going to mount that. Now all your instructions for that are going to be in here. You want to go ahead and take all that stuff off. So 409, that's the actual feet. So they've shot this thing a few times and chronographed it at 409. I think they advertised this at 405, but and when it says 409, it's going to be pretty consistent right there at that 409 feet per second. Like I said, they advertised this at 400 feet per second, but most of them are going to come in at 403, 404, 408. So when I put my first ring on, I'm going to count down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So from here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and that's usually going to be a good spot for your second ring. All right, so we take the top pieces off. Like I said, that should lays in there pretty nice. So you may have to mess with this a little bit and decide where you want your eye relief. This is usually where I mount them standard, and it usually works out. It usually works out pretty well sitting right there. So about 3 back, and like I said, 6 down gives you about the right spacing there. So now that we got the scope put on, when we look at our speed dial, I've got it set at just a bump above 400 because it said 409. So now I'm going to lock that in. This is a new feature on these scopes here. So when I lock that in, now this won't move. What happens to a lot of people is you're used to a rifle scope. And on your rifle scope, you use this to zoom in and zoom out, okay? That's not what this is. This is different. So, because we're not taking 200-yard shots, that's not a $700 scope that you put on a rifle to hunt deer with. So we don't have a lot of magnification here. This is just to get your eye relief, okay? So what'll happen is if you start fooling with this and messing this and try to get your focus, well, you've just thrown the whole thing off. I want to sight it in. That's your speed, okay? So we want to sight it in there, and then we'll use this for our eye relief. For me and my old eyeballs, I have to go way, way out so it's not blurry at all. A little overview, there we are. Make sure you take this right here off. Again, we're troubleshooting, and what I've had is people come in that did not take this off, and when you drop your trigger box down and it clicks on there, this is going to be clamped onto your string, and you're gonna have a problem. So make sure before you start sighting anything in, you take that off right there. All right, let's look at the operation of this quiver bracket. The spring that's here that keeps it clamped in, and it is a stout spring because I don't want you losing any of that. So if this is my crossbow here and I'm right-handed, chances are I'm going to be cranking with my right hand. So I'm going to put my quiver on the left-hand side, crank on the right-hand side. That way, as I'm cranking the quiver, the bolts are not getting in the way there. So there we have it. Everything's together. I want to mention the new camo too. I really like their new camo. That camo color is going to add about $200 to each crossbow, so you can get it in black or the camouflage, and that's it. So let's go through just basically what everything is here. So as we're looking on the bottom part here, this is our crank handle, quiver bracket, quiver, bolts, and from this way we've got, this is our stock, scope of course, trigger box. The crank is internal, it's inside here. There's your crank handle there that goes, it's where your crank handle goes. And as we walk on through, we've got the bridge, strings, cams, limbs, riser, rest. Okay, so when you hear me mention anything, now you know exactly what each one of those is. So that's an overview. I'm gonna go ahead and take, and again, pulling these things, this is serious spring. They don't want you losing anything. So the best thing to do, this is your safety zone inside of here, okay? It's not cocked or anything, but believe it or not, this is about the only place my hand is safe. Inside of here, inside this area here. So if I reach inside here, I'm gonna take my thumb, push down on that spring, remove my cocking handle, put the other side, I'm gonna push down on that spring and remove my quiver bracket. So you see what I'm pushing down there, remove the quiver bracket. So now we're ready to go. The button right back here, I'm gonna push that button down. Because it's not cocked or hasn't been shot, there's no tension on this button right now. So all I gotta do is push the button down and it's gonna drop. With my finger off the button, it doesn't drop. Push the button down, it comes down. Finger off, doesn't move. So I'm gonna push and hold that button, and you'll notice that's gonna turn as this comes all the way down. And then you'll hear, once it comes down to here, my thumb, there's a little arm here, and I'm gonna use that to push down onto the string, and you're gonna hear it click. Hopefully you heard that. It is ready now. It is ready to go. So your tether, you're just gonna come back into there. You're gonna take your crank handle, and again, whichever side, if you're right-handed, you're gonna put it on the right side. And you see there's a little tooth that'll go right inside of there. And then we're just gonna wind it back. Now, typically I would not wind it back like this. I want you to be able to see. I don't like this thing sitting right here on my leg. Typically, I'm gonna put it down here on the floor. I'm gonna put my feet around it so it won't move, and then I'm gonna crank it back. But I want you to be able to see. So as I'm turning, again, the X is silent. So as I'm turning this, no noise. The older versions, or if you just have an old R29, R26, you're gonna hear a click here. Perfectly fine, all the way back. Now, it's come all the way back. Again, one of the reasons I like this Ravin is it's hard to mess this up. We're all the way back at this point. That's as far as it goes. However, if I continue to crank it, if I'm not paying attention, I know what I'm doing, nothing bad's gonna happen. I can't over crank this. Most of the other ones, any kind of crank you've got on a crossbow, when you over crank it, you've destroyed your crank. Now you're talking anywhere from $150 to $250 to buy a new crank system. This one doesn't do that. So you're gonna come all the way back, and I always do. When I come all the way back and I know I'm back, about a half a turn, and I'm good to go. Take your crank handle off, set it aside. Your crossbow is cocked. So now let's go through the loading process. I'm gonna take my bolt, and you see this little bridge here. My bolt is gonna go underneath that bridge, and there's no rail. Again, just to kind of give you an overview of regular crossbows, you've got a rail. That rail will affect the cam, it affects the string, it affects the bolt because the bolt rides on that. With a Ravin, there's no rail. There's no rail for the bolt to sit on. So that's what makes it able to be so accurate at distance. When you see the commercials that say this thing will shoot a 3-inch group at 100 yards, I'm sure most of you go, oh yeah, right. It's no exaggeration. 300, a 3-inch group at 100 yards is absolutely doable with just the .003 bolts. You do have the opportunity to get the .001 bolts. What that is tolerance. That just means it would be called a match grade. So the bullet, where you get a match grade bullet, they're all more exact. Same thing here. So the 003s are just fine. 001s are a little more, the tolerance is a little more equal, so that means each bolt is even more equal. So how do I load this thing? So if you look, you've got 2 orange and a white, and that white is perpendicular to your knock. The odd feather is going to go down. So as I go underneath the bridge here, the odd feather is down, and you'll see there's a little hole in that trigger box, and it lines up with the string. So you'll see the bolt and the string are all lined up. If your bolt and string is not lined up, then that's not where it goes. It goes in that little hole because that's where your string is. So you're putting the bolt up against the string. Okay, we're gonna bring it down, we're gonna cock it, you're gonna hear it click. Hopefully you heard that. And we're good to go, we're set. So we're sitting and we're gonna hunt, we're gonna shoot our target, we're gonna do whatever it is we're gonna do. Now, end of the day, here comes the important part. This is our first safety check here. So your hunt is over. Time to decock your crossbow and go home. You cannot leave it cocked. You cannot take this home, put it in the case, and get up tomorrow morning and think it's gonna be like this. When you get up in the morning, it's gonna be blown to pieces and your hunt's gonna be over. You've got to decock it. Look at the tension, this potential power that's being held in these limbs and these cables especially. The string's just along for the ride, but the cables is unbelievable. You cannot leave this cocked. I can't tell you how many times people are like, well, I had it in my case and I pulled it out to use it and it was blown to pieces. I heard a noise last night and I didn't know what it was. Your crossbow blew up. You can't put this in the case like this. You've got to decock it. So let's go through that process. Take the bolt out. Some of you are probably going, well, duh, of course you take the bolt out. But I say that for the same reason. On the back of a tube of Preparation H, it says, do not take this orally. On a hairdryer, it says, don't use this in the shower. They have to put those disclaimers there for a reason. So I'm telling you to take the bolt out before you decock it for a reason. All right, now, because this is under tension, this button here is not going to work now. I can push that all I want, nothing's gonna happen. I have to take the tension off to bring the crossbow back to a decocked position. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my handle, put it on. Actually, I'm gonna put it on so it's angled up. I like that better. I'm gonna put about a quarter turn and hold. Now, the tension is here and not back here. So now you'll see I'll be able to push that button down and I'm gonna bring it down. Now, it's pulling. If for any reason this begins to feel wonky, get your finger off that button, let it settle. This is the problem and the dangerous part here. But again, I gotta start all over again now. I can push that button down. You wouldn't want, if I push this button down, bad things will happen. Pushing that button, nothing happens right now because there's tension on it. I have to release the tension, put the tension in the crank. Now, push the button down, begin to lower it slowly. Again, if my hand begins to slip, anything feels crazy, get your finger off that button, let it settle, reset. This is the dangerous part. This is where people get hurt and where you blow up your crossbow. If this comes out of your hand, you can see what's going to happen. It's going to come all the way around and it's going to hit you on the hand, probably break your hand. And that thing, you're not going to be able to get your finger off that button once it stops spinning, and it's going to go all the way down. And now we've got to send it back to the factory. They've got to put the riser on a laser level and make sure there's no damage to the riser. This is the part you really got to be careful about. You can injure yourself, and you certainly can mess up your crossbow. So again, it's halfway down. We're not done yet. But again, pushing the button down, nothing happens. I've got to take the tension off, get my grip, push that button down, and begin to lower it. It begins to get a little wonky. Get your finger off that button, let that settle, and you're fine. And just restart each time. Again, Take the tension off, push the button down, lower it down, and we're going to lower it all the way down. Now, until we get slack in our tether, we're good. Now, do I have to take it off the string? Absolutely not. It can sit like this indefinitely because there's no tension there. Okay? Take my handle off, put it back, off I go, and I'm ready for the next hunt. So one more word of caution here. I've talked to several people. I've decocked my Ravin 100 times and had no trouble. Yeah, but it's that 101 time that you're gonna have some trouble. My advice is to have a decocking bag. Shoot the crossbow into the bag and decock it. Take your bolt out that has your broadhead on it, put a field point broadhead on it, hang out the back of the shooting house, have a bag in the back of your truck, and shoot into the bag. This thing is an expensive weapon. I don't want to have to send it back for you. I don't want to have to charge you 170 bucks to put new strings on it and the hundreds of dollars to replace the limbs. Replacing the limbs on this thing is a pain. I'd rather not do it. Just shoot it. Just shoot it. Now, talking about shooting it, this is not like your bow. The strings, we're going to kind of get into maintenance now. The strings on my bow, I can shoot, I've probably got 2,000 shots on my string. Barely broke them in. This is not made for that. Ravin is going to tell you 400 shots, and they're going to say about 2 years for that. I don't advise shooting this thing 400 times. There's no need. Once I get it sighted in, okay, why do I need to keep shooting it? Leave it alone. Just leave it alone. Get it sighted in, go from there. All right, so now we've gone from cocking, loading, unloading, decocking. Done all that. So now let's go to maintenance. So really the most thing the thing you're going to look at maintenance wise is just the string. What do you do to it? In the beginning, these guys said wax your string, then they said don't wax the string. And a lot of people want to wax their string. Honestly, there's only this little orange piece. That's the only string. Everything else is serving. Don't wax your serving. You're wasting it, and it's not doing anything. And you're probably, I don't know for a fact, but you probably are going to end up pulling more dirt into the serving than you would otherwise. Now, if you decide to put some wax on there, put some wax on there. I ain't the crossbow police. You know, you do whatever you want to do, but just a little, okay? Don't overdo it. But you're only going to put it here. And when you do burnish it, take your finger and pinch it, and just really, really fast until it kind of heats up. Don't put a hairdryer on it to heat it up. Don't do that. Anyway, take your finger, burnish it till you'll feel it kind of heat up a little bit, and that'll melt that wax into the string. Because and then, you know, if there's too much, it doesn't take much. So the really only other stuff is going to be, they call it string serum. It's a lubricating fluid that goes only, and certainly don't put any wax on your serving. The only stuff, they make some stuff called string serum, and really the only time you need that is if it's 32 degrees or below. Doesn't happen that much in Alabama, but you need to have that string serum, and just to put a little bit. But you want to put some string serum on your crossbow? Fine with me. Not going to hurt my feelings. But that's the first thing with the strings. What you're looking for over time mostly is going to be on the cables. Okay, see where the cables are. This is your string. These are your cables. All this serving right here, once you get in the 300-400 shot range, you're going to begin to see that serving separate where you can see the string underneath. It's time. It's time to get you a new set of strings. A new set of strings, I believe we charged $170, $175 for a new set of strings. Don't chance it. I had a guy bring one in the other day, an R9. There's original strings and they're fine. No, they're not. You could see where one side had stretched more, and you could literally see how the crossbow, how one side was angled more, the cams were out of time, and all that kind of stuff. You're not going to be able to shoot it very well at all, because when it does stretch, it's not going to stretch equally. So you're going to be shooting all over the place. If you're shooting at 50 yards this year, next season you get it out and you're shooting 50 yards and you're 3 inches low, get a new set of strings. You're shooting at 50 yards and you're 2 inches to the right, or you're all over the target, get a new set of strings, because that's what's going to help dial it back in. Make sure you go to a reputable dealer that knows how to put the strings on, knows how to get the cams back in time and do all that kind of stuff for you. You're going to be, the longevity you're going to have with this is going to be much better. So maintenance wise now, let's talk about these bolts. Most of the problems we have with the Ravin CrossBow is user error, okay? And I don't usually look at guys and say, you messed this up, because a lot of times we just don't know. One of the main culprits of issues with this crossbow, especially limbs and strings, is your bolt. So what happens is when we're sighting this thing in, we're wanting to show out and we're wanting to do a group. You know, we want to get a good group. So look at this thing. It's 60 yards, I'm grouping them like this. Yeah, and what's happening is when you're shooting, your bolts, you're going to stack bolts in. Don't do that. Aim at different spots. If you've got 4 bolts to practice with, have 4 different targets you're aiming at. Don't have that ego that I want to see if I can put them all in here. You can. You absolutely can. This thing is so accurate. Do not stack. Do not try to shoot a grouping, because if you do, you're going to be doing damage to these bolts. Sometimes you won't know it. So this bolt is sitting here. The other bolt comes in a little bit from the side, and inside your target scrapes down the side of your carbon, and now you've damaged the carbon. You put this bolt into your crossbow and go to shoot it, and it blows to pieces. Okay, make sure you're checking your bolt, just like you do your arrows. You're going to bend it, bend it, bend it, and listen for it. If you hear that, toss it, throw it away. Your knock, you want to make sure that knock, and a lot of times your knock can be damaged and you don't even know it. That's what I'm saying. Don't try to group your arrows, because you can damage this knock and not even know it. If you have some replacement knocks, and I suggest having some replacement knocks handy. They don't cost much of anything. Put them in, but you want to make sure that it's indexed correctly. See your white feather, and the knock is perpendicular, okay? If your bolt is in your crossbow and it's at an angle and that knock is not perpendicular, you're going to have a problem. If you load your crossbow with that odd feather up and try to shoot it, you're going to blow the rest out of the front of it, because those vanes are going to knock the rest completely out. That rest is, I want to say, $89, and we're going to charge you a little bit to put it on. So you're talking about another $100 mistake. So just pay attention and make sure you get those bolts knocked up right and set in there right. Another thing you want to keep an eye on, don't have a lot of trouble with this, but occasionally your tether. So I've seen these, this is a new design on the tether, and I don't think it'll have the same problem, but I have seen occasionally where they get a little sideways and the edge gets worn really bad. You know, when you see that, again, bring it in. That still is something that they make us send back to the factory, but we'll send it back for you, or you can send it back. They don't mind, and you just call them. They'll give you what's called an RA number, and you box it up, send it to them. They'll replace it, ship it back. Ravin is a great company to deal with. Anytime we've had any problems, any trouble with anything, I could go through several different stories of some things that were pretty crazy, and a lot of them were the user's fault. And they just gave them a new crossbow, gave them a new set of limbs, put some new strings, did all kind of things for them, scopes, all kind of different things that they've handled. So if you buy this product, you're going to be very happy with it. Not just the operation of it, the quality of it, but the quality of service that you get from that company. All right, so troubleshooting, something I want to go through again. So let's run through the cocking procedure once again. So I'm going back for my afternoon hunt. Here we go. We're going to crank it back. And I believe it's still, my granddaughter, when I had her crank it when she was 6, I wanted to see if she could crank it. She cranked it back. She said, "Monkey, that's 11 turns. So just in case you wanted to know, it's 11 turns. All the way back, put a half a turn on it just to make sure. Now, put that back in my pack, back in the quiver bracket, whatever I want. Now, this, again, this is probably the main problem we had, the main issue when people call and say, hey, this thing won't shoot. This knock is a capture knock. It's not, it's like what goes on your bow. It clicks onto the string. Most crossbows, the bolt just sits up against the string and doesn't click onto it. This is actually going to click onto the string. Again, it's called a capture knock. If you do not hear it click onto the string, it is not going to shoot. That is a safety mechanism. So if I don't have it all the way on the string, it's not going to accidentally shoot, because if you did, if you've ever done that before, I've seen many crossbows blow up in this manner. You've got a little bolt retention spring, it's metal or plastic, and it holds the bolt down, kind of pushes it down on the rail. And somebody aims down, and that bolt will slide forward a little bit, so now it's not up against the string. And you shoot it, and the string actually jumps the bolt, and you basically blew your crossbow to pieces because you just dry fired your crossbow. This won't do that, because when you put the bolt in, it's got to click. So you'll hear it. Again, odd feathered down, we're going underneath the bridge. As you're cocking, again, safety, keep your hands in the safety zone, not back here. If this were to happen to go off, wouldn't, but if it did, you're gonna have to go home and change your pants, but you're not gonna lose a digit, all right? If it were to happen to go off. If your hand is back here and it goes off, you're gonna lose the tip of some fingers. So again, listen close. I want you, hopefully you'll pick this up. Listen. Didn't click. Didn't click. It's not gonna fire. I wanna make sure it's inside the hole, lined up with the string, and I'm gonna grab it, and it does take some effort. Listen. I hope you heard that. It's a little ping as it goes through there. If that doesn't happen, it's not going to fire. Click it to fire. You've got your safety on either side. Click it to fire. It's ready to shoot. Go back to safe. You'll notice when you take it, so it's on safe when it cocks. If you take it off of safe and put it on fire, it's pretty quiet. When you go to put it back on safe, you'll hear a little ping. That way you know it's back on safe. That way there's no doubt. You don't even have to look at it. You hear it, ping, now it's back on safe. But always check, because I've had that happen too. I thought I had it on safe. Sure you did, so check. So again, now you'll see that's not coming off. I can hold it. That bolt is, if that bolt falls out of there, wasn't ready to shoot. Now, decocking, pull it out. It takes a little effort to pull that out. And we're gonna decock again. What do we do? What's the steps? Crank on, put about a half a turn, push the knob down. We're gonna go back. Oh, it's getting crazy. Take your finger off that button. Whoo! I had a guy I was talking to one day that people were bragging about how many times they decocked and had no problem. Guy said he was turkey hunting and had his turkey glove on. And it was the same. He had decocked it hundreds of times. He was decocking it, and as he did, it wrapped up in his glove, and he was like, uh-oh, and it came out of his hand. It came back and literally knocked his thumb in half. It's just not worth it. You know, shoot it into a block or something. Anyway, if you want to decock it, fine. You've seen I've done it several times. Tension off, button down, hold tight, and lower it all the way down until you see your tether slack. Take it off, you're good to go. One other issue we've had, and I haven't had it happen in a little while. I had some guys that were, hey, I've cranked this thing all the way back and I can't get it cocked. And I went through the hole, hey, put the bolt down. Man, I hear the bolt clicking and it's not firing. They brought it in and they were right. But what was happening was the trigger box was not coming all the way back and not crank, because if it doesn't come all the way back and lock into this little hole, it's not going to fire. So what was it was the crank. So this has a slip. I don't know if you call it a slip differential or what, but as you can see, when I'm cranking it, there's a point where I can continue to crank it and nothing happens. Sometimes that's not tight enough. That begins to happen at a lower poundage, and it's not all the way back when it begins to slip. So if you have that problem, so if you're cranking your back and you're seeing a gap between your trigger box and the stock, that's what's happened. It's just a bad crank. Ravin replaced every one I had problems with, and it went through. It was the R10 mostly. I don't believe I had that happen on the R5 or any other ones. It was the R10 that it happened to. And it just happened for a little while. So whatever it was, I think they got a handle on it, but it had to do with the crank. So if it won't come all the way back, again, go to your dealer, call your Ravin, call Ravin and say, listen, here's what's going on. They'll, again, send you an RA, send you a new crank, and you'll be fixed up. All right, so that's an overview of this Ravin crossbow. If you have one of these, maybe I forgot something. I've sold literally hundreds of these, have worked on hundreds of these, replaced limbs, replaced strings, done all kind of different things to them. And honestly, it's a great product. And not only is it a great product, they're a great company. They stand behind what they sell. So we have really enjoyed our relationship with Ravin and hope that continues. But again, highly recommend this. If you're here and you've already got one of these, you've already read all the reviews. You don't need me to do a review on it. This was just the whole reason I wanted to start a channel was so I could put this on display, because a lot of times in our shop, I just don't have the time to go through how to operate this. Even if you've owned a crossbow before, this crossbow just works different than any other one. It's been out long enough now. Most people have seen videos, they've seen people use them, or they've been around somebody who has one and can have someone help them with it. But again, I wanted to create this video so when somebody comes into my shop, I don't have time to go through it, or maybe you don't have time to hang around and have us walk through all the steps. So now you know, and you've got a place you can come back to and hopefully answer any questions. If I skipped something, if you have a question that I didn't cover, put it in the comments down below and I'll get to you as quick as I can. If you looked at this and you got something out of it, maybe you found something, hey, I've been having that problem, or that's something I'm going to have to keep track of, give us a like. That's going to help us out. We're a brand new channel, we're just getting started, and we're not a crossbow channel. We're gonna focus on outdoor gear, hunting, as well as survival, prepping, a lot of different things, just lots of stuff to do with the outdoors. But I don't want to be a crossbow channel. I would not consider myself a crossbow aficionado, but I work on them, I fix them all the time. So if you got a crossbow question, whether it's a Ravin, a 10-point, or something else, shoot me a question down there in the comments, and I'm happy to see if I can help you out. Again, thanks for tuning in. We appreciate everybody's support. Stick with us, and we'll see you in the next video. Now, turn off your phone, turn off computer, get outside, and let's get wild today. Take care. We'll see you next time.